Okay, so I'm gonna talk to you about how I created a slideshow of 20,000 pictures that can be showed on digital photo frames throughout our house. So the initial setup was we had a single digital photo frame in the basement, and this was like a traditional digital photo frame that had an SD card that could only play a small selection of pictures. We also had two old iPads, an iPad 2 and an iPad mini. So I proposed replacing that digital photo frame with iPads. So we set up the iPad 2 first, and I attempted to find a solution that could play back a slideshow of pictures on it. So we found this app. Oh, I keep saying we. I found this app. It was called something along the lines of File Manager, which I know there's lots of file managers for iOS, but it had a orange icon. Let's see what. These are like weird commercial sites, probably. It's not Documents. Documents is great, but it's not it. None of these are it. Anyways, I'll edit in what it is. I'll take a picture of the iPad and edit that in. But I found this app that would do it, kind of. But the problem is the way our pictures are structured, right? So we have it's not mounted on this PC. I'll mount the SMB share where our pictures are structured. So the idea was to stream these pictures from an SMB share. Okay, so this is where our SMB share is, and actually some of these folder names, I'm gonna get it to the point where we only have harmless folder names on screen. Okay, I think actually this is fine to show. Okay, so you can see that this root folder here, this mom's photo backup, is the folder I want to stream from. But we have all of these individual folders, and all of these individual folders have pictures in them. So like this folder here has a bunch of pictures in it, right? And the problem is the app that I found could stream SMB shares. It could mount them and stream a slideshow from them, but it couldn't go recursively through folders. So I kind of looked for other apps that could kind of do what I wanted, and of course I found the Plex web app. So we have a Plex server, right? So if we go to plex.tv and launch it, we have a Plex server with all of our ripped DVDs, a very eclectic mix because they're ripped. And of course, pictures. We have pictures here. So it's the case where it's like Plex will do a slideshow. So if we like hit play on a picture here, it will start playing a slideshow of our 23,000 pictures. But you can see already the problem. It's loading. It's loading very slowly. And it loads between pictures as well. And this is on my main desktop, which is a very powerful machine. And it ran even worse on an iPad. It ran incredibly poorly on an iPad. It actually crashed quite regularly. So it was, and I tried it in Safari, the really old version of Safari that these iPads were running, as well as Puffin, and neither one proved viable. So we gave up on that. So now we're on to the more complicated solution, which is what's here in my Proxmox server. So this is a virtual machine, and this virtual machine, the original idea of this virtual machine was to take that Plex web stream and stream it with OBS to the iPads. But there were several problems with this. The first problem I ran into was I was intending to stream to YouTube with an unlisted YouTube stream. However, I couldn't do this because the iPads were too old to run the latest version of the YouTube app, and I didn't want to use the YouTube website because really old Safari had already proved finicky enough. So we are not going to be streaming to YouTube. So how do we rectify that? Well, we have this container here, CT105, which I promise you is not a clone trooper ID. So this here is running Nginx, and it's running Nginx with the RTMP module. So RTMP is a protocol that allows for live streaming. So if we get our IP address here, you can see, and type that into a web browser, you can see that we have Nginx, and it's not really serving any HTTP content. But if we were to receive an RTMP stream from it with VLC, which I will pop up here, and go to Media, Open Network Stream, and play my RTMP stream, then we will be streaming the output of OBS from this stream PC. VLC takes a really long time to buffer. It's one of the annoying things about VLC. But we're running the VLC app on the iPads, because the iPads are capable of running a new enough version of VLC to receive a stream. So you can see here's the stream that we are receiving on the iPads. And this stream is, of course, at the native resolution of the iPads, because why would it not be? Okay, great. So, but we are still using, at this point, we were still using the Plex website. And of course, now we're not using that. So the Plex website was working fine, but it wasn't working well. There was a lot of loading, and it was also having really high CPU usage in the VM, which was causing OBS to drop some frames. I'm not that concerned about OBS dropping frames because you can see we're only streaming at 10 FPS. I mean, we're streaming photos. It doesn't need to be buttery smooth, but it was a little bit annoying. So I decided to find a better solution. And this is where XnView MP comes in. So if we go to XnView's website here, you can see that XnView MP is the supercharged image viewer for all platforms or whatever. Anyways, it's a tool that can view images, right? But there's a million tools that can view images. But it has a really powerful built-in slideshow tool. So it costs money for businesses, but it's actually freeware for individuals, and they have Linux versions, which is quite cool because, you know, lots of commercial software doesn't have Linux versions, but they're cool people, and they make commercial software with Linux versions. Actually, it was originally, rather interestingly, it was originally written for Silicon graphics machines, which were Unix-based, so it's not that surprising they have a Linux version, because porting a Unix code base to Linux is easier than porting it to something like Windows, but still, yeah. Anyways, here we go. So we have XnView MP. So here you can see the configuration. So we open the slideshow configurator, and we go over here to the file list, and we added a folder, and we are going to add the SMB share. So of course, how do you do that? Well, you have to mount the SMB share. So you can do that with the sysutils command well, not command, but you do it with the mount command, but you need the sysutils package in order to mount an SMB share. And, you know, or at least you use the sysutil package in Ubuntu. This is Ubuntu Mate 20.04. In another distribution, you would probably use a different package. Debian uses sysutil as well, but if you were on, like, Arch or something, you might need a different package. But at least in Ubuntu, you can mount it with sysutil, right? So you mount it, and then you add folder, and you point it at your main folder, and it will actually go recursively and build this directory structure based on all of the folders, all of the photos in all of the folders. And then you can go over here to settings. You can use a different delay timer. It defaults to 2 seconds, which we thought was a little too fast, so I set it to 3. Random order, loop it. I kept a title bar because it was nice to drag it around, because you can see our screen is a little bigger than the iPad's screen. And then you just click OK, and it starts the slideshow. I'm not going to click OK again because it will start a second slideshow, and we don't want 2 of them going. So that's basically it for the server-side stuff. Now I will show you what I did with the iPad mini, because the iPad 2 is just sitting on a stand, but the iPad mini is a little bit more interesting. So this is just a silly little project that kind of complements my prior project with the streaming of photos to the RTMP server. So this is a I can't remember who makes it. It's probably like Plantronics or whoever makes most of them. Digital picture frame, except of course it's not. It's actually an iPad mini. And it you can see that there's no glass on the front because the touchscreen obviously works. So this, but the iPad mini, this is a first gen mini, and but they all have the same size screen, and the screen happens to be exactly the right size to fit in this frame. However, some modifications were still required. So if we take the frame down, and there's no stand on it currently, so we will need one of those, but you can see that the iPad, while it's actually a perfect width to use these original clamps, it doesn't quite reach out far enough to the edge. So these are just scraps from 3D prints that I drilled a hole in and screwed on to kind of clamp the iPad into place. I also had to cut away some of the plastic here to allow the lightning cable to come out. And once again, I'll have to figure out a stand. I'll probably 3D print something. So the iPad will mostly be streaming photos from VLC because I set up an RTMP stream. So if we go to network, we can open a network stream. And this is our stream here. It's called test right now because I still am fine-tuning some things. I'll have a video about how I set up this stream separately, but currently how it works is it's OBS streaming to an RTMP server on my network, and then that RTMP server is going here, and OBS is capturing a Chrome window which has Plex running in it that's doing a randomized slideshow of all of our photos. I might change this. I'm somewhat tempted to mess around with the built-in screenshot functionality in OBS because OBS is running the Linux VM, Ubuntu Mate 20.04, and I'm somewhat tempted to replace to attempt to mount an SMB share in Linux using fstab, and then use the built-in screenshot, or at least attempt to use the built-in screenshot functionality in OBS instead of capturing a Chrome window, because that might be faster. But anyways, I'm not going to show you the stream when it first comes up, because if it's a picture of any of us, then I'm not going to show that to you, but if it's a picture of like scenery or something, I'll show it to you. So the stream's loading, and right now we just have the Plex loading screen. So this is part of why I want to replace Plex with something else. We get a lot of Plex loading screens. The VM I'm giving it has a decent amount of resources. So like here's a picture. Again, not going to show you all of it, but you can see pictures are coming up. So yeah, the VM actually is having a decent amount of resources, because of course it does, because it's streaming. It has 4 gigs of RAM, I think 4 CPU cores, and these are not great CPU cores. They're CPU, but they're okay CPU cores. They're LGA 1366 Xeon at fairly low clock speed. So again, not great, but good enough. And we're streaming at the native resolution of this iPad, which is like 1024 by 768. And we're streaming at 10 FPS because we're mostly streaming pictures, which means transitions are a little choppy, but that we get pictures. And the pictures look fine, and once again, it's at the native resolution of the iPad, so that's cool. Once again, I'll cover this stream setup in more detail. but I just thought this was a neat piece of upcycling, because the original Plantronics thing that was in this case was not very good. The screen was very low resolution, it didn't look good, it could only read low capacity SD cards, and you had to manually update the pictures. And this is cool just because it reads pictures from our network, and my mom's Android phone has a setup with a folder sync app to automatically upload pictures to our SMB share, which Plex automatically searches for pictures, so this automatically grabs the newest pictures. So, yeah. Some pictures are random, like there's a picture of someone's feet. But that's part of the problem when you're just grabbing random pictures. Anyways, I'll make a video about the picture stream and upload that first, because that's the more interesting part anyways. This is just like an extra thing that's complementary to that.